Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody who's come today. We hope that today will be a positive and productive meeting. I'm Andrew Marchington. I'm the lead member for the Children's Scrutiny panel, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Can you all please be aware that we are webcasting this meeting. Just a little bit of housekeeping. There is no planned fire alarm today, so if you hear the fire alarm, you need to act accordingly. And the officers present will lead us out to the nearest fire exits, which is at the back of the hall, and we need to assemble in Corporation Street, which is by the main entrance where we came in to the meeting. For anybody who's not been to a corporate before, can I just introduce you to the various people involved in this process. So the panel, members of the Scrutiny panel are sat at the top table. We've got Councillor Amanda Pinnock, Councillor Paul Davis, Linda Summers and Councillor Paul White. They're the members of the panel today who are considering the matters. We've got Penny Bunker and Helen Kilroy, who are the officers from Democratic Services, and they will be supporting the panel during the meeting this morning. At the back of the hall, you met them on the way in. We've got Jenny Bryce-Chan, Richard Dunn, Carol Tague and Sheila Dykes, and they're from Democratic Services as well. If you've got any questions about the proceedings today, you can go and ask them at any time during the meeting, and they'll clarify the procedures about what's going on. On the right, far right, we've got the signatories to the call-in, and they are here to provide evidence and answer questions on those areas of the call-in the panel is focusing on. And on our left, we've got Councillors Carol Patterson and Viv Kendrick, who are the cabinet members with responsibility for learning aspirations, communities and children. And they are here to answer the panel's questions and provide evidence as the decision maker. The evidence as decision maker. And they are supported on their left by a number of our own council officers. So the aim of today's scrutiny panel is to consider very carefully the issues raised by the call-in and by listening to the news and supporting evidence of the signatures of the call-in, members of the public who are down to speak, and the council decision makers as well. In terms of the arrangements for the meeting, we'll be following the timetable which has been handed out. We've structured the meeting to try and allow sufficient time and opportunity for the panel to hear the breadth and relevant evidence on the issues raised by the call-in. The panel members will hear all the perspectives to assist them in coming to the end of balance together and inform our conclusions. So again, we'll try to conduct this in the spirit of openness and fairness, and wherever possible, I would like people to adhere to the time allocated to address the scrutiny panel. And on the whole, that's going to be 5 minutes. We've got a timer at the front, and I'll give you when you've got 2 minutes to go, and another 1 minute to go. So we'll try and get the comments made within 5 minutes. That will be really, really useful. Also, if we've got a number of people speaking, actually, all of us have presented evidence, we'll be trying to repeat points that have already been made, unless it's going to take introducing additional evidence within a similar area. Understand, because we're discussing changes to arrangements in local school, people are going to be very passionate about this. That we need to get an evidential process, and all of us need to be able to present the evidence that's going to allow the panel to make the appropriate decision. We are here to review 3 specific areas raised by the notice of calling, and we are going to focus today on the capacity of the schools in Almonbury, the openness of the decision-making process, and the lawfulness of the decision that was made. And can consist everybody presenting evidence today to focus on those 3 particular areas. If you are bringing in additional arguments, I might ask you not to do that at this moment in time. But if at the end of the meeting there's additional things you'd like, not necessarily about the call-in, you'd like the panel to discuss, panel members will be available afterwards to listen to that, but we must focus on the issues raised by the calling today. Also, I'd like to stress to everybody here present today that the scrutiny panel does not have the power to overturn the Cabinet decision. But after taking account of all the evidence that is presented today, the panel may recommend that Cabinet consider making amendments to the decision, or we might ask them to accept learning points about how the decision was made. It will then be up to Cabinet to decide whether it wishes to accept Scrutiny's recommendations. Right, just a final housekeeping point. If you've got a mobile phone, can you please either turn that off or put it on silent? So we might have so we've not got any distractions during the meeting. So, and just the final thing about the way we're going to conduct proceedings today, the scrutiny panel here today is here to provide an independent review of the decision. Whatever the decision the panel reaches today, we need to make sure that we are not prejudged any decision before we come here. We're here to look at the evidence, to listen to the evidence, and it will be based solely on the evidence. The decision we make at the end of the day should be solely based on the evidence that's been placed before us. So. I'm now going to turn to the formal agenda. Give us a copy of that and go through that. So, the membership of the committee. All members are present except and we received apologies from Councillor Richard Smith, and we received apologies also from Tony Bromley and Dale O'Neill, who both of whom are not well today. Right, have any members of the panel got interests which they wish to? No, thank you. Okay. All formal meetings of the council take place in public. This meeting is no different. But if during the proceedings issues of financially sensitive nature come into play, which cannot be discussed in public, one of the members of the panel will need to move a motion, and what technically it's about we will withdraw to a separate room to discuss those in private. That's the only time that we will be in private. Everything else will be known. So it's a standard practice if it's a financially sensitive information. Okay. Right, we turn to then item 4, calling of the Cabinet decision in relation to Almonbury Community School. Okay. So may I ask Councillor Paul Davis, spokesperson for the signatories, to outline the reasons for the calling of the decision made by Cabinet on the 16th of July 2019.
Good morning. I would like to raise the following points regarding the decision made on the 16th of July 2019 about the future options for Almonbury School. That decision being to change the age range of pupils at the school from 3 to 16 years to 3 to 11 years. During the decision-making process, there have been a number of concerns that have not been adequately addressed within it, including in the report and the statutory proposal. These concerns relate to the provision of adequate numbers of secondary school places in the planning area. Concerns are that the information made available to parents and counsellors as part of the decision-making process and the options presented to parents during consultations were not necessarily made in the full spirit of openness. According to information tabled in the statutory proposal for factoring into the Cabinet's decision-making and also presented in the Cabinet report of 19th of March 2019, it stated that from September 2020 there will be 500 available places in the planning area. This is once the places for Almonbury Community School can be taken out of account. The projected pupil populations for Year 7 intake peak at 666 in 2021 and, except for a single drop in 2025, remain above 620 for the following 7 years. This is without taking into consideration the impact of additional demand beyond the next 7 years from additional housing and residents in the areas due to the implementation of the local plan. The information put forward on which the decision was made assumes that pupils will access school places outside the area. These schools are currently full. During the decision-making process, there has been no evidence provided that the Council has explored or assessed the impact on schools in neighbouring areas of an additional 160 pupils. In the paper Future Options from Almondbury Community School, it included the proposal to explore the possibility of increasing the number of places at King James's School and to make some adjustments to local catchment areas. King James is currently at capacity. The school received 400 applications for places for entry in September 2019, but only has places for 186. It's a popular school. I cannot broach the subject of King James's School without raising an issue of openness in the decision making. During the non-statutory phase of the consultation, it was presented to parents that in future children who currently attend secondary school at Almondbury Community School would have priority for a place at a different local school, namely King James's or Newsham. This was misleading, as the proposed catchment area was then adjusted in the statutory proposal which was issued on the 7th of June 2019. In that proposal, Netherhall Learning Campus was included and King James's was not put forward. During the statutory consultation, the options presented to parents were Netherhall and Newsham. This decision also has an adverse effect on people living in the lower houses and Waterloo areas and will also put an added burden of travel on Almondbury pupils. Furthermore, Newsham School is about to become an academy, removing further pupil places from local authority control. King James's School initiated a planning application in September 2018 to expand the school, making provision for a further 30 pupils per year. An additional 150 places created by the building of 10 additional classrooms would also remove its reliance on temporary classrooms that it is currently using. This was public knowledge through the consultation process and was factored as an additional facility by parents in the area. However, that planning application was withdrawn on the 10th of July, one whole week before the Cabinet met to decide future options for Almondbury School. Yet this information was not presented at Cabinet on the 16th of July. It is a failing that it was not considered as part of the decision. There are parents I've spoken to, some in the room and some who couldn't be here today, who have been led to believe from the beginning that their children would be accommodated at King James's. The withdrawal of the planning application makes this accommodation unlikely. But actually these parents had already been misled. It was not made clear to the parents of pupils at Almondbury Community School during the statutory phase of the consultation that King James's School was now not under consideration. The Council was not open in the changes to options for families and pupils. The capacity issue does not only relate to secondary provision. Currently, the buildings at ACS house both secondary and primary age pupils. The plan is to close secondary provision and also to reduce primary provision to 30 places per year group from 2020. Where will these children go? There is no evidence that this has been explored. Excuse me. I return to my premise that there has been a lack of openness during the process. This flaw in the consultation process means that the decision has not been made with the benefit of the full facts. Parents, children and counsellors were denied access to information relating to the financial position of the school and were unable to calculate whether the school was viable and whether best value was being made from this decision. This was notwithstanding requests for information being sent to the Regional Schools Commissioner and officers. Councillors were asked to accept the word of officers and this information was not disclosed. There was one route, and officers and Cabinet adhered to that message. From the outset, it was not if secondary provision at ACS closes, but when. I remain unconvinced that a full exploration of the options has been considered. No evidence has been shown that consideration was made of alternative options to closure. For example, a dual-site venture with King James's, or academisation of all the years at the school, not just the primary ones. Any changes or proposed changes to provision of schools and school places are emotive and can make families and communities anxious. The decision summary from July the 16th states that the reasons for approving a statutory proposal are that the proposal would contribute to improving the secondary provision for all children in Almondbury. The decision as it stands does not contribute to improving secondary provision. This is an important decision for the pupils at the school now, for families with younger children, for the whole community in Almondbury and surrounding areas. And so, because of the facts I've outlined here, and as listed in the calling document, and I'm sure it will be expounded on by my colleagues, by other speakers present today, it is because of these we are asking this decision should be recalled and reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. I just point out that Councillor Davis has had, as a lead signatory, has had a longer time than other people giving evidence, and everybody else will be limited to 5 minutes. So thank you, Councillor Davis. We're now going to go on to listen to other signatories. Councillor John Wilson is going to read a written statement on behalf of Councillor Munro. So you've got 5 minutes, please, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. In the Cabinet report of the 19th of March 2019...
Sorry, John, use the...
I'll come to the front if that's...
Yeah.
That's a long walk. Thank you, Chair. In the Cabinet report of the 19th of March 2019, Council proposes to remove 110 places from secondary provision across 2 planning areas. It is clear from the table showing the future pupil numbers that in any year there will not be sufficient school places. It is clear pupil numbers from houses to be built in the local plan are not included. I calculate that the local plan will create 37 new secondary pupils per year group in that area. As evidenced at the meeting and referred to in the calling document, the table on page 5 only gives pupil numbers up to 2021. Therefore, this was based solely on current pupil numbers. How can the Cabinet make a decision when members do not know what the figures are for pupil numbers from the local plan? Cabinet claims that the figures don't matter. How can the Cabinet make this judgment? Pupil numbers generated by the local plan will impact on secondary provision places in the area. How can the impact of the local plan be considered as insignificant in the decision-making process when these pupil numbers represent entire year class? The plan relies on a historical pattern of movements. It is claimed that around a quarter of secondary-aged children choose to attend schools outside the planning area. Many of those schools are already full, and this has been the case for the last few years. At Shelley College, for example, this situation will continue as the local plan provides for many houses to be built in the Denby Dale area, which forms part of the PAA for Shelley. The movement of pupils and choice of schools is much more restricted than has been suggested in the reports. I quote Councillor Pandora at the meeting on the 29th of May, where he likens it to peering into a crystal ball. No details were provided in any of the reports to Cabinet as to whether any of the schools outside the Cabinet could in fact accommodate any additional pupils. It now seems many children living within the PAA for ACS and King James's will be forced to seek a place at secondary level outside their PAA. Cabinet has reached this decision relying on an unreliable historical pattern of movement of pupils, a prediction of declining birth rates which can of course fluctuate, King James's extension plan which it transpires may or may not go ahead, but not considering that additional pupils moving into the area over the next few years due to the local plan, meaning children will not be guaranteed a place at their local school. This should have been given more weight in the decision-making process. Cabinet plans to reduce surplus provision at ACS while also planning to build capacity into King James's and other local schools in order to provide sufficient places for pupils in the two planning areas. In the initial report, although Netherhall Learning Campus was grouped together with the other schools across the two planning areas, no other mention of it was made. Netherhall was only introduced in the statutory proposal stage, where it would take pupils from ACS who lived closer to PAA. Parents of the one-to-ones understood that King James's would be the school that admitted pupils from ACS and Right Hallows. Councillors understood that King James's would have its PAA redrawn to admit pupils from the Almonbury area. A copy of the map with the redrawn PAA for King James's School is in the statutory proposal. However, a rider has been inserted which suggests that the King James plan has been jeopardised, as it claims the decision to proceed with the plan is not dependent upon a decision outside the control of the LA, but no mention is made of the school. Additionally, the role of the school is referred to, but the name of the school is withheld. If there already is surplus provision, why then are council closing secondary provision at ACS, yet adding capacity at secondary level into other schools? This has never been explained, and there is no evidence that this has been taken into account in the decision. I do not believe that parents of children at ACS were fully able to understand the implications of what was being proposed because of the way in which the proposals were couched. No details of schools were provided, and this was different to what parents had understood was going to happen. It is not clear, therefore, how Cabinet reached their decision with King James no longer in the equation. Due to the lack of openness on the part of the Cabinet, parents have been misled as to which school their children will be attending in 2020, how far their children will be travelling to get to school, or what size the class their children will be attending when they get there. These decisions that have been taken inappropriately by Cabinet, who rather than hold up their hands to admit they've got this wrong, but persevered with their plans to the detriment of families and children in the area. This has had a misleading effect on both public and the councillors alike. I therefore request the decision be referred back to Cabinet for amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Bernard McGinn.
Okay. I would like to start by looking at...
Can we just get the microphone in the right place and then...
Okay, is that okay?
Bit closer.
Is that okay? All right. I want to start by looking at the Ofsted report of December 2018. Although the overall judgment was that the school was inadequate, it is by no means all doom and gloom. It talks about year 11 students, for example, leaving to go into apprenticeships. There is, however, a criticism of previous 3 years GCSE exam results. In the report, there is a criticism of Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 teaching and outcomes. But when we get to the Cabinet, various reports, nothing has been made about the criticism of Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. It seems as though the reports that are sent to Cabinet are all centred around Key Stage 3 and 4. So it's important to realise that it wasn't just the upper school that was not doing well. The lower school was actually very heavily criticised. In fact, probably more criticised than the upper school. In fact, there's nothing in the report to the Cabinet about numbers in Key Stage 1 and 2 and how the numbers will be managed. If I've read correctly, there are 394 in the lower school, and the report talks about creating a 210th primary academy based at Greenside Centre. There is no costings given for the enlargement of that place to create, because Greenside Centre can't accommodate 210, I don't think at the moment. There's no costing given to create the proposed academy, which at the moment only houses nursery in years 1 and 2. Nothing about where the surplus of children will be educated till it's stabilised at 30-year intake. So there has to be a gradual rundown of the primary pupils, but there's no mention at all in how that will be done in the Cabinet report. When I was told that initially King James is to take a large number of pupils, that would have gone to ACS. I had the initial thought that this would actually be good for social mixing in the area. If you look at the numbers already, quite a large number of parents that are living the planning area for ACS go to King James's School. In the non-statutory consultation, there was a stress on primary children in ACS and All Hallows being included in the planned admission area of King James's. I was told by parents taking part in one-to-one conversations in that initial consultation, which was March to April, that the officers seemed to be pushing the emphasis onto Newsham and Never Hall, asking about what school do you want your children to go to. I talked to the head of King James about where he would house the extra children, and he talked about the need for porter cabins initially. I checked the numbers in King James. There's 186 places that are available every year, and there are over 420 applications. Never Hall pretty far as well, particularly at the lower end. The only school with space available seemed to be Newsham. I then learned that King James were applying to create 10 classrooms to get rid of their present number of porter cabins. So it seems really strange that the head teacher at King James wasn't talking about applying at this stage. They said that they needed to create space because there was a shortage of school places. Obviously, this clashes with the report to Cabinet of a surplus of school places in the area. Obviously, one of them cannot be right. The planning officer agreed with me that King James' application should go to a planning committee as they were building a conservation area, and therefore that was contrary to the local plan. I have asked questions about the financial viability of ACS. According to the Education Authority, ACS was not viable. I asked for figures but was never given any numbers. Until early July, when I got an answer to a freedom of information request. Taken 3 months to answer, which I got an apology from the council, but taken 3 months to answer basic freedom of information requests. They also asked a question about records of meetings between the authority and King James's School. This was in a freedom of information request in April. And according to the answer given in end of June, beginning of July, there was no record of such meetings. It was all verbal talk. So the main thrust of the initial consultation had given all the wrong impression. That, however, is still in the satisfactory consultation. Talk about creating extra space at King James and changing the planning area. Of course, King James is an academy and they can determine their own planning area. It looks as though nothing has been put down on paper with King James on any agreement. When I asked Cabinet Member Carol Patterson what would happen if King James's application was turned down, she told me the proposal did not depend on the application. King James had in fact withdrawn their application on July 10, 6 days before the Cabinet meeting. She's quoted in the local paper saying she was unaware of the withdrawal. I wonder though why the statement that the proposal in ACS contains that the plan would put forward did not depend on schools outside the authority's control appeared in the final document to the Cabinet. But it didn't in the initial consultation. So obviously, I think there's some. I don't know who knew what basically. It's a lack of openness. I think it should be noted here that as Newsham has also got an anti-cut rating and in special measures, it will become an academy and therefore not under the authority's control. So if ACS was to close, it would have control over. The authority would have control over Never Hall, which can house 131 pupils a year, and even on the authority's figure, 500 will not be able to go there. The point is, at the moment there are 620 places available in the planning area. If you get rid of Almonbury Community School, you're down to 500, and they're saying they have control over the planning, the school. They don't. They only have control over 131 places out of 500. What has made me as a council upset about this process is that I've been trying to represent the views of the parents of children in the ACS catchment area and hold the authority to account. I've continually been told that answers to questions cannot be given until a decision has been made. And the initial document we've handed in highlights all the different times we've asked questions and not being given a proper answer. It's all well documented, and I don't want to go over that, but the fact is, when we've been pressing for answers to questions, we haven't been given them. And there was one stormy Cabinet meeting when Councillor Pandor basically told me to shut up. So I don't think that's a good gives parents in the ACS parents a good impression, and they were impressed. I don't think we're very happy about the way.
Are you drawing your remarks to a close now?
Okay. I think the authorities are asking the parents of children in the ACS catchment area to take a belief in faith and place their trust in a school that has been declared inadequate, that's news, and in special measures. And they are told by many they are not willing to do it. I want to finish off by talking briefly about the legal argument. I don't think either of the two of the speakers talked about it. The legal argument put forward by one of the members of the Save Almonbury campaign. Basically, it's saying that the order to close the school has been put under the wrong part of the Education Act. The notice was published under Section 1 and it should have been published under Section 2. And I think someone will go into further detail about one of the parents will go into further detail about that. And the authorities seem to recognise it should have been under Section 2. But I'm not a legal expert. I think he will be able to explain it better. Okay? All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Panel members. Right, panel members, have we got any questions of the signatories, please?
Raised that by two of you, the issue of openness around financial information. It'd be very useful if you could just build it out and tell us what financial information you believe was withheld and that you will be able to see. And I know you were particularly looking at the viability.
Yeah.
Just wait. Yes, please.
If you try to remember exactly what there in a second.
We kept talking about the...
I need to repeat. People didn't hear, so I need to say it again. So, as I said, during your submissions, I think both of you talked about the lack of openness around financial information. So, for me, it'd be very useful if you could outline what financial information you felt was being withheld and not being passed on to you. And I know it's in particular context to the viability issue.
Well,
is that to the lead signatory?
It would be first of all to the lead signatory.
Lead signatory, that's fine.
If I draw your attention to the evidence supplied in the calling documentation, there were the repeated questions to Cabinet, there were questions supplied posed to the Regional Schools Commission regarding the viability, regarding the funding at the school, regarding the PFI that was on the school, and there was none of these questions were answered. There were repeated questions about the viability of the school in terms of the financial implications, in terms of the value that was being, the value of the decision that was being made, the value for money and closing the secondary schools, and the evidence is all listed there. Bernard has first experience in the Cabinet.
Well, sorry,
I've come into Cabinet several times to ask these questions. And when I repeated questions about financial viability of the school, I was told you've been given these answers already. And there was one particular Cabinet meeting where the leader of the council told me and told Alison, who's not here today, that she was being awkward or being political because she was asking the questions that had been asked before, and they were told that the Cabinet member at the time, Councillor Ahmed,
what evidence?
He wouldn't. Basically, we didn't get any there was no financial information because they kept saying, "You've got the answers already." That was the answer we had every time. You've been given the answers. So what we're depending on is a word of the Education Authority saying this school is not viable. Why is it not viable? It's like the rat circle argument. Can you supply the figures that prove it's not viable? And we weren't giving them.
I'm sorry to press this again from my understanding. I think it'll help us as a panel because obviously, we want to come to a right decision. Is that specifically that you weren't given numbers around the deficit and the projected deficit?
Yeah, well, particularly the projected deficit. In the end, we were given the numbers for the deficit. And,
so you did have it?
Eventually, after the decision, after it got... It was in the Cabinet report. Right?
So it might be like if I pursue
yeah.
the decision maker.
Well, the point is about this. Why we're asking, you might ask me why we're asking a question about this, because it's the council's assertion that no one would take over the running of the school. They weren't even going to offer the school for it to be another academy because they'd made the decision it wasn't viable. So we were asking, well, can you give us the facts to show us it wasn't viable? And we were never given them.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Right, I'm just going to take a short break now because Councillor Butts arrived. We just need to check on the two issues before we proceed to the councillors. Okay. He has heard all the evidence that's been presented. He's sat on the meeting, so he's also a member of the decision-making panel today. So that's what I just wanted to clarify to make sure that he heard all the evidence that's been presented, so we can make the same balanced decision the rest of us can make. Fine. Right, we're going to now move on to participation by other councillors. I think we've got Councillor Andrew Cooper. He's on the list to speak. Do you want to speak at the shop? Please, Andrew. Give me 5 minutes.
Okay.
We'll see how this works. Time works on this. Okay.
Just an observation to start with, that we will see over the rail maps here, and if anything, it proves that the planning of school places, the funding of school places, which comes with pupils, is fraught with difficulty, and that indeed parental choice actually works against the sustainability of local schools. I want to talk about the choices that have been offered to parents in the future. King James's School, if you've got to be straightforward about this, I think it's not really a choice. It's been presented as a choice, but it isn't a choice. And the withdrawal of the planning application, while it may have been completely and utterly without guile or innocent, it looked awful. It looked absolutely appalling that the withdrawal of that planning application, which meant that there was a lot of uncertainty over whether any additional places would be available at all. And so, was it ever really an option? Netherhall Learning Campus, I represent people in the Lower Houses and Ashenhurst area. Lower Houses, Netherhall Learning Campus is 2 bus rides away for pupils. And so it is not a very attractive option at all for pupils to go there. And I come to Newsham, and I've been seeing the head of Newsham, I've visited my fellow councillors, and we chatted there, and yes, there's some good work going on there. They're seeking to address the issues that have come up in the Ofsted report. But there is a selling job here to be done to parents. And if you look at the Newsham High School map, where residents are within the pupil admission area, if you look at that, you'll see a profusion of blue dots. And those blue dots are actually people who go to Honley High School. 184 people within the pupil admission area for Newsham are going to Honley. And to be quite honest, I don't like to see that. I would like people to go to their local school and to feel that their local school is doing a good job. And the more green dots I see there for people, dark green dots, for people who are within the area, I would regard that as a good thing. But there is a selling job here to come to parents, and that's very much needed, and there's going to be a lot of convincing them. So parents are actually being placed in an extremely difficult position, and there's a lot of concern about them on that. Also want to look at the impact of the local plan. Now, there were assertions made during the meetings, the cabinet meetings that I attended, that the local plan, what was going on with the local plan, was not relevant really to the future and sustainability of the school. With parental choice, who knows? But certainly, if there are more pupils, more children living within that area, then that would be a valid consideration. Now, with the pupil admission area, I looked at the local plan, and there are 1,122 potential dwellings within that area. And what I've got to say is that of those, 274 of those dwellings, which are within the land north of Fenny Lane, are council land owned by the council. So it's not all the private sector. So it's not all the private sector. So I heard a lot of assertions about the impact of the local plan during the cabinet meetings, but no actual evidence, and I think that had an impact on the decision. And that's my evidence.
Thank you, Andrew. Panel members got any questions of Councillor King? Thank you, Andrew. We're going to go now into the public participation part of the meeting. Again, if you please come forward and use the microphone. If you wait at the end of your contribution, because panel members might have questions to ask. So the first speaker I've got is Michael Buck. I need March into second on Lisa Island, if you could be ready after Michael. So Michael first. We'll try and get the timings right. Some flex.
Thank you.
Sorry, Michael. Time is not work.
It's all right, just leave it at 30 minutes.
Fine.
Thank you. All the things I'm going to get is based on 236. First of all, the various acts of Parliament.
Sorry, can you speak up a bit, please?
Yeah,
is that any better?
That's better. Thank you.
Should know better than that. Right, based on various acts of the education in 2006, 2013, October 2018, and finally in November 2018. Also, lots of different emails that have been passing to myself and Kiro and Martin. All those emails are available in evidence if you want to request. The main thing was the proposal was issued on June the 7th about the change to the wage rate. Notice you've given the government to section 19.1, which is a pertinent point. We've had lots of emails, thank you, between them about which was the correct one. We agreed after numerous emails with the officers, some of which the emails, when they got the right way to stages, were also copied to council officers and the leader of the council information as they said they would be interested. What it comes down to, I won't go through every because it will take a long time, is that in the inspection act it said that any changes that what they're suggesting should be made under section 2A. We have lots of discussions, eventually I got an email, and this was that says, I'll read this out. Our legal advisors, i.e. the council legal advisors, have provided the following response to your question. The prescribed alteration that is proposed is one that is capable of being proposed by the council by virtue of regulation made under section 19.2A, not 19.1. When this was issued on the 2nd of June, it was issued to all the parents. It was also issued to the local newspaper. The newspaper did it. The newspaper said the alteration under section 19.1, information in here systems like different, but the actual laws and everything else, they should be made under section 19.2A. The other emails that I sent, and thank you to Martin. The last one he said, I then asked them, you've now got one place in section 19.1, the other one is 19.2A, and your legal department said it should be made under 19.2A. I suggested, that what they needed to do was to go back to the beginning and start with the proposals. I said, what did the council think? And the accordance with the appropriate statutory requirements and stands by the information provided, which basically means the council said this document issued on the 7th of June is correct in this number. The one that they publicised in the newspaper also said this, so they say that is correct. The last thing, sorry, 2 minutes, I'll keep it. The last one, Martin said, because we've been talking about it, he said that what I should do is, as previously suggested, you may wish to discuss further with your legal advisor, which I did. Now, let me explain, sorry, I'll take it as well. The reason I have to explain it is, one of the jobs I do is chair of a local community centre. I'll explain why. It's a rather large one, it's got a footfall of over 20,000. It's got a turnover of over 100,000. So in one way we've got performances that do grow all over about 1,000. Now although they say this is nothing to do with, I showed it in the details. I checked with Martin to make sure that the details that I was passing to him were allowable and the freedom of information and everything. And his comment was the exact comment. From what he's seen, he cannot understand how the 500 council said they were going to go with the original when their own legal department, i.e. the legal department of the council, had said it should have been made under section 19 should have been. So it seems that another it seems that the information has been given to the parents and the information given to the newspaper were incorrect. And what do you think the differences are based on that?
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Michael. Can you just tell me if the panel members got any particular questions for Michael? Linda.
Could I just ask you a short question? If your legal point is right, and it was issued under the wrong notice, what impact do you think that had on people who wanted to respond to the publication?
Right, there have been various meetings that have been held with the council officers in which they've given information to lots and lots of the local people. When it was raised, they were quite confident, and I quite understand why the council officers were confident it was correct, because their own legal department has told them that, and I quote it, that the council themselves, not the cabinet, but their executive quoted, the council remains confident it is acting in accordance with the appropriate statutory requirement and stand by the information. And if you basically, I'm not going to go into detail because it's happening, but if you look on October 2018 from the Department of Education, they will be looking at that. Very kindly, the two council officers gave copies of this to the people in local meetings who were asking questions about it. So I think my criticism is not about the council. They were quite often give all the information they can give, some of it which haven't been decided by cabinet or council, but they've been working with them. I think the real problem is that the council said they're really going to ignore their council officers and go with the original statement they gave. That was your question.
It was more about whether you think it had an adverse impact on people who wanted to respond to the consultation.
Well, basically, they had the unofficial bit first, then we went to the official 4 weeks one, and people, some of them know, a lot of them aren't, had meetings about it, and they wanted input on myself and other people as well. And they thought about it. It's technical. A lot of people are not technical, I'll say that. But they said, if the information there is not beginning. I'm not going to go into those. Lots of people are numbers of pupils, but that's been covered, so I don't intend to go down there. But they were thought, if that's wrong, how many other things are wrong?
That's the point you're making. If this notice was wrong, then is there other parts of the decision making? Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Michael. I will move on to come next. David Whittingham, if you want to get ready to speak after I move on this.
Well, I'm Eileen Marchant. I'm neither parent or member of staff, but I live in Armonbury, and I have worked and actually awarded Armonbury Community School a national award for the quality of their physical education. And they went to the DFE to receive this. My point is not based around figures, because I've listened and it seems the whole decision was made on a mathematical exercise. How many places here, how many places do we need, the deficits and so on. I think parents were misled because they were losing their community school, but they were offered, or they thought they would be offered places at King James's, which of course is in Armonbury, and so the disruption was fairly minimal. However, that's since been proved to not be an option. I don't think parents were really satisfactorily advised of the sort of support that could be put into Armonbury Community School to bring it out of its inadequate status. I think we've all got to remember that Newsman is inadequate, they have a new leadership team, and the future looks to be promising. What will be the impact of the influx of all those Armonbury pupils into Newsman? It will be fragile. It's going to be fragile for some time. And yet I don't think consideration is being given to the impact that it would have on Newsman with the influx of new pupils. The Netherhall Learning Campus, again, not an option, although it was offered as an option, but it's proved to be full. And let's remember, Netherhall Learning Campus was created from two inadequate schools, Rawthorpe Junior School and Rawthorpe High School. They were inadequate. But the Netherhall Learning Campus was given adequate support, good leadership, and it's now a good school. And I'm sure that Newsam, when it's inspected again, because it still is inadequate, if Ofsted say it's not, I'm sure that Newsam School will probably move into good, because it's been given the support and the guidance needed to bring it into that category. I'm not convinced that Armonbury parents were actually told what sort of support could be put into Armonbury Community School. A school where, 3, 4, 5 years ago, phenomenal investment was put into it in order for it to become a through school. How much has been explored about how much that costs? And yet, one Ofsted, it went into an inadequate status, and almost immediately the council decided the only way forward was to close the secondary provision without any consideration of what they could do to change the status of that school. So my plea is not about numbers, it's not about what places are available here or how much that costs. My plea is for the pupils at Armonbury Community School. What is it doing to their mental health and well-being? Armonbury is a community and it needs a community school. And is there any consideration being given when we've been doing this mathematical exercise what impacts this is going to have on those young people and many young people that follow them? I'm not convinced it has. And in spite of pupils coming to talk to Cabinet, and I know the Dean here, I'm not convinced Cabinet gave any real consideration to the personal development and welfare of those pupils. So that's really all I've got to say. But my plea is for the pupils, the young people that live in Armonbury and want to attend a community school. James's is not an option, and so Newsam seems to be the only one. Thank you.
Hang on a minute, I think my questions.
Sorry, I should have stayed there.
Just very, I can ask a question. You raised the issue about support at Netherhall Renews. Do you think there's any evidence that appropriate support has been put into Armonbury?
Not long term. I think the decision was a short term one, and I think it's been proved subsequently that it was short term with not a lot of long term planning, because they discovered there weren't enough places to go around once they made the decision. I'm not convinced they looked ahead to see what, with a good leadership team, what could have been done at Armonbury Community School.
Thank you. David Whittingham, and if Patricia Jennings wants to stand by, please.
two children at Albury Community School. Thank you, first of all, for the eloquence of everybody else. I will do my level best to carry on in that mode.
Thank you.
5 years ago, Albury Community School was created with the great promise of how this was to be a flagship school and great things would happen. But unfortunately, time has moved on. From a parent's point of view, consultation has been we've been fed misleading information, changing information, and no information. I can recall going along to Albury Community School on a Saturday morning to meet the council staff, and it was made very clear that King James's School was the way forward. Now, things have happened since then. King James's is an academy, they've made their own decisions, but we have been misled. Consultation, frankly, has been a shambles. The high level of personal care and support we were promised as parents during the time did not materialise. Our lack of faith, and I speak for myself and Cassandra, mother of our children, our lack of faith comes from being parents of a pupil, our eldest girl in Year 6, who was allowed to look around other secondary schools in the area and make a choice of our child for their future. A week after secondary school places were confirmed to all pupils, the council dropped the bombshell that the future of our chosen school was at risk. We were not told in a sensitive manner. Instead, we got an open letter sent home by our children, who were understandably bewildered and concerned. This has not changed as time has gone on. Indeed, the concern has deepened, and as parents, we've not been able to help them or support them because we can't give them the answers either. This is a helpless situation for us, and I'm shaking here now at the impact it's having upon myself and my two children. Now, my two children, the eldest is 11, is impacting her now. I've got a second daughter, aged 9. That will be impacting her relatively soon. Now, my two daughters are doing very well at ACS. My eldest is doing really, really well. I'm going to touch upon my 9-year-old because she was subject to bullying. The school were brilliant in their support to nip that in the bud. My 9-year-old has left school, left a few weeks ago, described in a report as a superstar. Please do not put this star out. And I'm not, as someone else might like to say, I'm not talking about figures, I'm talking about the impact on parents and, more important, about the pupils. There is nothing wrong with admitting there's a mistake or mistakes being made. I think throughout life we can all think of times when we've all learned from that. So I please ask the panel to consider this in all due good faith and consider most strongly the option of going back to Cabinet with another way forward. Overall, so far, this has not been looking at the best interests of the students. This appears to be looking at how best to walk away from the school that has suffered at the expense of an ill-equipped council putting in place yet another project that has no foundation and no fault beyond the initial idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's got other questions? Okay, thank you, David. Patricia? Patricia Jennings. You're not going to... That's fine. Okay. Charlene Davis?
It's pretty much covered the same kind of aspect.
That's fine. Okay. So panel members, the panel has got any questions in general for members of the public based on what we've said this morning? That's fine. Okay. Right. Okay, it's now 11 o'clock. I think we're going to take a short 15-minute break. And after that break, we'll be hearing statements from the decision makers, which will be the response to what we're calling. And so take a 15-minute break. We'll reconvene at 11:15.
And the opportunity to provide a wide choice of curriculum, particularly at key stages 3 and 4, which is one of the things at the Ofsted. I'm not particularly going to go on about the Ofsted report because that wasn't one of the areas of focus, but that is one of the things that the Ofsted report didn't pick up at key stages 3 and 4. And it's vitally important for all children to access a broad curriculum in a setting which is secure and sustainable. This improves their outcomes and chances and enhances their opportunities, helping them to fulfil their full potential. Currently, the school's budget is significantly overspent, as has been said in the report, so there's been plenty of openness about that. It was over £500,000 overspent. It's more likely to be nearer £1 million by the end of this school financial year. And that is largely as a result of the lack of numbers on the school's roll now, and those projected figures as well. And there is no plan that can stop the school budget deficit from increasing over time. I mean, something else I will come on to later, but just to say at the moment, taking into account all the house building that there is planned over the next 15 years, over the next 15 years in the area, and if all those new pupils from all those new houses went to Almonbury Community School and not any other school, the school would still be significantly empty, only 450 pupils out of 600, which again would still will make the school unviable from a financial point of view. That deficit is going to continue to increase if we don't do something. And this is solely because of the current and predicted continuation of falling schooling rolls if the school was to remain as is. We've got information, and it was in the reports as well, I've been to Cabinet, which shows that the pupil population in future years in that area and in other areas within Kirklees or Huddersfield, the school rolls will fall. And just to throw in, it's not been mentioned this morning, but the fact that the school is subject to a PFI contract does not alter that position. We want to secure good quality education and sufficient provision for all children aged 3 to 16 years in Almonbury and the surrounding area in Huddersfield South East. And the decision we took at Cabinet takes into account the current and projected needs for places across all age groups. And that information is, again, spelt out in these reports. We did not attempt to mislead anybody, nor did we take the decision blindly. The report did set out all the current numbers and projected numbers across the area, and even when taking into account potential house growth, that situation is unlikely to change in terms of vacant spaces. The Ofsted report, which actually hasn't been mentioned by the call-in councillors, but that is a significant...
Does the Ofsted report relate to some of the key lines of inquiry?
Sorry?
Given that you said it's not been mentioned by the signatories.
Yes, I'm just going to say this is one of the reasons why we made the decision. Because the Ofsted report means because it found that the school was in special measures or needed special measures, it has to be, under current government guidance, it has to become academised and be a member of a multi-academy trust. When any multi-academy trust is looking to take on support of new schools, they will do a test of due diligence. And in doing so, they will look at the situation of Almonbury Community School as it is at the moment and projected, and will realise that the school isn't viable in its present form, and would not take on the support of that school. So that's the situation we found ourselves in. We felt that we needed to take control as much as possible of this situation to ensure that there was the primary education within the Almondbury that we could, the best that we could do. It would still be academised, but we wanted to make sure there was enough provision for primary. But closing the secondary phase gave us some control over the lives of the children that are there at the moment, the staff that are there at the moment, and we can work best with the school to make sure, as I keep saying, the best interests of the kids are taken into account. The council is working now, or once this decision is finally agreed, is working very closely with both Almondbury, with the current school, with King James's, Netherhall and Newsom. And there is a high level of commitment from those three schools. It's not true that King James's is not interested, to the transition of the existing pupils in a planned way. There's various issues that I will have to come back to. I'm trying to follow the areas of focus that we've been given. So I'm now, but I've made an opening statement, if that makes some sense. I have picked up some of the things that have been said along the way. But now I'm going to turn to the call-in request. And firstly, I'm going to look at the issue of lawfulness, because I feel we need to perhaps get that one out of the way. So I'm going to take that one first, if I may. I do understand what's been said, and I do understand by Mr. Buck, and I do understand what the legal advice that we've been given. But just to make it absolutely clear and to get it absolutely right, I am going to turn to our legal advisor to explain why this decision was perfectly legal.
Is this microphone working? My name is John Chapman. I'm the Council's Head of Legal Services. I've been asked to make some remarks in response to the line of inquiry which comes under the heading lawfulness and financial propriety. The details of that were contained within the papers, and they were restated with great courtesy by Mr. Buck earlier this morning. Our position is that we believe that the statutory process for making and confirming this proposal was lawful. In response to the specific points raised by Mr. Buck, we believe that there's been something of a misunderstanding underlying that submission and a confusion in relation to the use of the terms section and subsection as they appear in the relevant statute. It is confusing to a layperson, and these are technical legal matters, but I'll try and explain them as best I can. The Education and Inspection Act 2006 is the primary legislation which empowers the local authority to bring forward proposals to make changes described as prescribed alterations in the language of the Act to community schools such as Almondbury Community School. And Section 19 of the 2006 Act deals with the publication of such proposals, and as far as its material, provides as follows. So Section 19, publication of proposals for alteration of schools. Where the local authority proposed to make a prescribed alteration to a maintained school, and the prescribed alteration is one that's under subsection 2, that's Section 19, subsection 2, is one that's capable of being proposed by a local authority, then the authority must publish their proposals under this section. We're talking about Section 19, 2006 Act. Subsection 2 goes on to say, a prescribed alteration is capable of being proposed by a local authority if, in the case of a community school, a community special school or a maintained nursery school, it is an alteration designated by regulations under this subsection as one capable of being proposed by the local authority. So in this case, the proposed alteration to the age range of Almondbury Community School is one that the local authority can propose to make because it's an alteration designated by regulations. And regulations are what's called secondary legislation that is made pursuant to powers contained within the primary legislation, which is the Education Inspections Act 2006. It's an alteration prescribed by regulations, and the specific regulations in this case are the School Organisation Prescribed Alterations to Maintain School Regulations 2013. So, the overall effect of Section 19 of the 2006 Act is to require the local authority to publish its proposals. The effect of Section 19, subsection 2, is to define what proposals the local authority can make by reference to the 2013 prescribed alterations regulations. And contained within those regulations are detailed provisions as to what proposals the local authority can make and the specific publication requirements that the authority is required to follow. So, going back to Mr. Buck's submission, the primary submission in the calling says, however, where the prescribed alteration is one that under subsection 2 is capable of being proposed by the local authority, the authority must publish its proposals under this section, i.e. 19 brackets 2 close brackets A. That's the submission that's in the calling. That submission, in my view, confuses a subsection, section 19, subsection 2A, with a section, i.e. section 19. And the fundamental point is that the local authority is required to publish its proposals under section 19 of the Act, and that's precisely what the local authority has done. Even if there were merit in the submission that's been made, and the notice and the 2006 Act specify that the notice should be published under subsection 2, or that the notice should expressly say this, and that's not the case, then a failure to specify in the notice the relevant subsection under which the proposal was being published would not, in my view, invalidate the notice. It would be what I would regard as an immaterial consideration. And I think that was the point that was being implied by questions from the panel member. I think to an extent that was perhaps conceded to a certain extent by the proposal.
Thank you, John. There's copies of that John's statement available at the back of the room if people want.
Okay, so shall I continue? Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn to the issue of capacity now. I mean, the issue of capacity has always been fully explained in all the three reports that have been to Cabinet from 19th of March right through to July the 16th. And yes, those figures did include predicted projections taken into account house building in the future, and I've already stated something about that. But just, to say that even if all those houses were built over the next 15 years, and they're not all going to be built next year, the year after, they will take 15 years to come on stream, and even possibly a bit longer before they're all full. And certainly, children will move through the different year groups as those houses are developed and as those kids grow up. But taking into account all of that, and the figures I think that was read out on Karen Allison's behalf, are true. It's about 37 children that will be per year group that will come out of that. Even if that's the case, there is still sufficient space with the number of schools available in the area without Albury Community High School at the moment. So it's not the high school, and I could actually turn to my colleague here for a little bit more explanation perhaps about how planning affects this.
Thank you. I was really concerned by people saying King James wasn't in this equation. And Councillor Cooper's absolutely right. The withdrawal of that planning application was really not helpful and doesn't give confidence to anyone. Planning application by King James's School is their business. However, there are documents in the public domain that on the planning website that you can look at, and I've had a look at. The school did a pre-application inquiry to planning in September 2018, long before the Ofsted inspection, certainly long before this proposal. The school agents also prepared a transport statement and a preliminary ecological appraisal statement in February 2019, before any of these issues came to light, to Cabinet, into the public sector about Armoury School. The planning application was withdrawn in July. I understand an email went to planning on the 10th of July, and planning confirmed to the school's agents on the 22nd of July, and a copy of the letter, because it's in the public domain, and I understand letters went to people who raised concerns about the application, saying this is being withdrawn. And I think the thing that people, perhaps who, and councillors perhaps who don't do much with planning, may not have come across is very often applications are withdrawn because they're being asked for information by the planners, they can't provide in the time scale. If they don't provide it in the time scale, the application's refused. Or in discussions with planners, they realise that there's something different needs to be done. I don't know if those are the reasons for King James. If you withdraw an application, then as long as you can comply with certain requirements, you can reapply within 12 months and with no fee. It's a very frequent thing that people applying for plans do. I don't know their motives behind it. You could look in terms of, in the July Cabinet report, it talked about how we as an authority would have to work with the relevant schools and look at capital investment to help them make sure that they had adequate places. I'm not saying that that might be an issue, but it really is a bit of a red herring saying that King James is not a school that's being considered and is working cooperatively with the education services to provide places for the future, as are Newham, as are Newham. And I do remember at one cabinet meeting, a member of the public saying, and where's Nether Hall come from? They were never in it. And they arose because the consultation with parents, and off the top of my head, I think 156 people said they were interested in Nether Hall. So it really is about really confirming that King James is still part of this whole process, and people shouldn't think that there aren't opportunities there.
Thank you. Yes.
So Mr. Webb, the time is a bit, so we set half an hour aside, so we're already about 20 minutes. So, because then the panel members will have some questions as well. Yes. So if you can sort of address the other points as quickly as possible.
Right.
And then move this issue to officers. I don't know if officers want to speak as well. So.
Okay. I mean, a lot of, as Viv says, a lot of the points I have already addressed in one way or another. I'm skipping through the responses that I've drawn up in advance just to... the King James is still a player in this, and as is Nether Hall, as is Newham. Whilst there's been informal discussions with those three schools behind the scenes, nothing that would be any discussions that could be had, but they were all exploratory. None of them could actually determine what we were going to do after any decision had been made purely on the viability of a Barnbury Community School. The fact that King James's have withdrawn their planning application makes absolutely no difference to any future discussions that we do have with King James's. And as we said again in the report several times, the decision to close the school is not dependent on any other decision that may have been made or what may need to be made in the future. Just to talk about the primary school for a moment, or the primary phase, I mean, questions were raised as to how we would cope with the reduction in numbers to 30 for that. Perhaps I could just turn, I mean, this has been taken into account, and we have got the figures on how that will happen, but if I could perhaps turn to Joanne Sanders for the moment to address that.
Thank you. I think we tried to put that in the consultation document. There were transition tables. What we're clear about, if you look at current numbers on roll, which we did put in the report back in March, we've got up-to-date figures that we anticipate because everybody moves up a year group. And we've got some much smaller year groups in the primary. So, for example, we're anticipating there to be 32 youngsters starting reception in September, and then we've got year groups of 43, 41, 43, 53, 56, 65. What we've said is we're not going to limit the numbers to 30, and we're going to have to transition some youngsters out. Those youngsters will be able to see their time through the primary, but we will limit the numbers by making changes to admission arrangements from September 2020. So eventually 30 youngsters will feed their way through. In terms of building accommodation, the Greenside site can accommodate 210 youngsters. It was formerly an infant school building fit for purpose for nursery youngsters plus 2 classes of entry, so 60 per year group. Obviously the numbers are much lower than that at this moment in time. That poses some challenges for the school in the interim, but we've got Key Stage 2 youngsters still in Fernside. We'll still be able to use that building in the interim. What we were clear about all the way through, although I accept we haven't put a figure to that just yet, we were aware that we might need to make some relevant adjustments. For example, some of the toilets might be teeny-weeny toilets fit for purpose for infant school youngsters, and some of those might need to be replaced so that they're suitable for youngsters up to the age of year 6. So we feel very confident about that arrangement. So we want minimum disruption. We want to be able to secure that school as a primary school going forwards. It's really important.
Thank you. I just want to say something about the maps that you've got in front of you. This isn't new information. It's information in a in a format which makes it perhaps easier to see rather than the actual figures that were given in the reports. But those actually only illustrate the information that you've already been or that's already been given in the various reports over time. Just a quick comment to say that both primary and secondary schools were failing to provide a proper curriculum, but for different reasons. I'm just going to very quickly, because of lack of time, talk about the availability of information. Again, I've said that at various stages, in all of these reports to Cabinet, that information has been there. Particularly the information about financial information. There's also about financial information, capacity information available on websites, publicly available on websites. Some of it may be out of date. We've been able to give you more up-to-date information, both in the reports and here today. But we've never shied away from giving that information to the public at all. I've already said about the deficit is growing, and there's no plan that can claw that back in the future. And the cost of the PFI it's not relevant. The authority will pick up the costs of that, and or they will remain building costs in terms of maintenance, grounds maintenance, etc. will still have to be paid, whether it's academised or not, and whether or not it was within the PFI or not. So I've skipped through the things I wanted to say. Just, I suppose, a couple of things that have come up from that have been said this morning. I mean, the 400 applications to King James's, for instance, which people have been suggesting King James is out of the question. Yes, there have been that many applications, but only 234 of those were first preferences to King James's. That's still oversubscribed, admittedly, but that is a figure which can be handled. A lot of those children are already within Armoury Community School's catchment area as well. Just to say that King James's is not out of the equation. Netherhall is in the equation, whilst it wasn't in the original proposal or the original paper, or it was not mentioned. Of course, that's what consultation was about, and as my colleague, Councillor Kendrick's already said, we got responses back from that consultation which said, oh, I'd like to go to Netherhall. And Netherhall themselves said, excuse us, we may only have a PAN of 131, but that could be increased, it's not a problem. So we did listen through the consultation. The final proposal did actually take all those points into account. I think I'll just leave it there for myself and just ask if there's any other things that the officers all want to say.
I think just to illustrate that the pupil distribution maps that we've brought today, that information is included in a document that we've referred people to in every cabinet report. It's freely available for anybody on the council website. It's the secure insufficient places, because I think it was said it's a complicated set of circumstances. We have a lot of variables, and this document goes a long way to describe that. But the pupil distribution maps give a really clear indication. If you look at King James's School in particular, and I'm looking at the ones where the King James's School, the pupils on roll, so it's the one with just yellow dots, you can see the shaded area is the current King James's catchment area. And if you can look really closely, quite a big proportion of that is fields, so there's not many houses because of the area that it serves. But what you can see is, and it's underpinned then by the numbers, currently on roll of King James's School, 500 of the 901 youngsters are from within that school's own catchment area. There's already attending King James's School, unsurprisingly, because the fact it is located not within its catchment area but outside its catchment area, from Almonbury Community School. So people are choosing and already being successful in securing places because of the close proximity. There are other youngsters that are preferencing and securing places here as well. Some from Netherhall Learning Campuses, catchment area, some from Shelley College, some from North Huddersfield Trust. And I think this is really important when just trying to weigh up where people are choosing to go and where the opportunities exist to work really collaboratively with the schools, the secondary schools that neighbour Almonbury Community School. We read out a statement on behalf of, probably because it was half term and they weren't available, on behalf of all three head teachers, Ian Rimmer from King James's, Dean Watkins from Newsham, and Michael Kent from Netherhall Learning Campus. There's a high level of commitment from these schools to support both future arrangements, i.e. the future Year 7 cohorts to come, and we were very clear right from the word get-go about what decision-making lied for the local authority and which lay with King James's, being its own admission authority. We were very clear and open and transparent about that, and that requires working in partnership. We continue to work in partnership with all four schools, including Almonbury, because people want to do the right thing for the youngsters currently on roll and the future cohorts that exist. So I just think that was quite helpful to demonstrate some of the question around sufficient places.
Right, I'm going to any other comments. We're going to some questions. Members of the panels got questions.
Question. Yeah, I had a question about if the school closes in September 2020, there doesn't appear to have been clarity that I've seen in the documentation about where year 8, 9, 10, 11 pupils go. And in light of the fact that Netherhall and King James's School are full, it would indicate there are no places for years 8, 10, 11, 12 in those schools. I.e. the only places that appear to be available are in Euston. So it seems that we've got a lot of information that says lots of things, but it doesn't actually pinpoint the question of where pupils in 8, 9, 10, 11 from Alderman Community School go in September 2020.
I think a lot's been said today about the well-planned transition. It's a phrase that we've used, and we do want to do that. We've continued to meet with a group of parents and local ward members. There's a question about do we physically, and this is to be worked through, but we have at the moment a decision. We're able to make we're able to start to put some plans in about bringing certainty for families, because it's not just the youngsters that will be on roll. I think it's also about siblings that are coming through the system. The admissions round opens in September for admissions into 2020, and we understand that parents will be wanting to make some choices. So we did, in the report, talk about transitional arrangements. Forgive the phrasing, what we said next year, it would be a normal academic year in terms of the school is fully staffed with curriculum specialists, and that would give us some time to be able to work with parents to understand what would be possible for them. I understand what people are saying about physical space, if we actually physically moved youngsters to another institution, and some parents may want that. What we've also said is there's the opportunity for youngsters, and we have listened to what has come through consultation about friendship groups wanting to stay together, and we do think that there could be an opportunity for youngsters to stay for at least one more year in the Fernside Avenue site, but on the roll of another school, but we need to be able to talk to individual families about what that means for them. That's why, with a decision made prior to the end of the academic year, we want to be able to bring some clarity around admission areas. That involves, and we were clear about that right from the word get-go, both in the 19th of March report and the final decision report, about requirements to vary admission arrangements and applications that would need to go to the Office of the School's Adjudicator. We want to get on and do those so we can bring that certainty, but what we've been really clear about, I don't want to force anybody to do anything. Parents have got the opportunity for preferencing, but we'll work with individual parents, and we want to do that for everybody all at once. We understand that at the end of August 2020, there'll be youngsters that are in year 10 who need some continuity for their year 11 and finish their year 11. We believe being able to stay on at the building but be on the roll of another school, we'll be able to put those transitional arrangements in place. But we need time to be able to get those things, give some certainty, the certainty that people want, and that's our intentions to do that as early as we possibly can in September. So whilst I appreciate it feels quite uncertain, we're working as soon as and as hard as we can with the relevant decision-making powers, and I appreciate the LA control, not LA control. I don't think we've really got control over a lot of things. The way to achieve the best here for the youngsters that are impacted and the families and for the future is to work in collaboration, and I think I just want to re-emphasise the high level of commitment from neighbouring secondary schools. And some people might want schools outside of that as well. We need to work with parents to make sure we can support them in their choices, but stay within the constraints that we all have to operate in of the school admissions code. So I hope that gives some indication. I realise it's hard. It's hard for that to be expressed in paper, but that's what we tried to do. And we don't want to mislead anybody or raise expectations that can't be fulfilled, but that's what we're trying to do.
Can I ask a question that's not unconnected with that one, really? Is whilst noting what you say about King James's still being in the mix, effectively, in terms of where there is available capacity, it seems that you are substantially dependent on Newsome. And I'm conscious of the fact that Newsome is also rated inadequate and is also substantially undersubscribed and therefore presumably facing the same financial pressures of maintaining an estate far bigger than its per capita funding. So I wonder how confident you feel in relying so heavily on a school that may be equally vulnerable.
Well, I will ask Joanne to just fill in the details on that, but to say no, we're not dependent on Newsome. There are negotiations going on with all three schools, but obviously Newsome would like the places, but or the pupils to fill their places. But I will ask Joanne to say a bit more.
So, in terms of Ofsted outcomes, I just really want to be clear that this has never been about the fact that any school can't be turned around. We work with schools, we want to improve them, and there are a whole heap of views about how best that's done. Amber Community School has had a significant amount of support and continues to have. We're not investing in the school. We've got and have put in executive experience leadership from a school in Leeds. We've been really clear about that. We've secured leadership across the school, experience leadership from September. There's always staff turnover, and we've got collectively there are subject specialists teaching those youngsters. Newsome is on a trajectory of improvement. We've been working really closely with Newsome. It's local authority school. It's turned itself around significantly, and there are lots, if you read the report, around the capacity of the head teacher, the leadership and management of the school, and that some initiatives have started but have not yet been embedded. That's the challenge always with the timing of an Ofsted visit. The school, it is right, somebody made the comment that the school will become a sponsored academy. That brings greater opportunities to work with other system leaders and work with other schools to improve outcomes, but we're not, whilst yes, the capacity, when you look at numbers on roll currently at the school, if people wanted a place at Newsome, then they'd very easily be able to be accommodated at Newsome because it has the space. We're not saying to anybody that's where you must go, but some people will choose that, and we want to be able for people to make informed choices. It's right what Councillor Patterson has said. We do have opportunities with Netherhall Learning Campus. There was some opportunity because it did, part of the building housed our people referral units. That we were able to relocate that by mutual consent last year. That means that there is some opportunity to look at additional physical space there. It was reflected in the statement from the head teachers. What we wanted to try and do is make sure any moves were well planned, so that youngsters can be fully integrated into school. There's a smooth transition, so rather than in dribs and drabs, but then parents are able to make those preferences also. How we use physical capacity, I think I answered that with the Almondbury Community School site provides some interim capacity, physical capacity. There's some real opportunity to utilise that space, but we need to strike the right balance between that being a long-term solution. We see in every year group out, if there's only going to be 40 youngsters left in the school, albeit on the roll of another school, that's not much of an educational experience. So we need to be able to do that, working with the school leaders and the parents to make sure we get the right outcomes. I think you asked a question about the sustainability of Newsham. So we can't quite compare Newsham with Almondbury Community School, because Almondbury Community School currently has a similar number of pupils on roll, but that's across year groups from reception right the way through to year 11. When you look at the numbers of secondary youngsters currently on roll at Almondbury, it's less than 300. Whereas Newsham has got around 524, 550. It's set to increase in September. The school is becoming more popular. More people are choosing the school. Between 500 and 600, you start to get sustainability. Newsham itself has struggled in terms of sustainability, but it has been able now to balance its budget, and so therefore with an increased number going forwards, then it's got more opportunity to offer more and be more sustainable and see that improvement sustainable.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Just hopefully you can hear me. Okay? Yeah. Just taking you back to the deficit issues, it's obviously a very important issue in terms of the viability pressure of the school. Would you explain what processes or actions have been in place today to manage that deficit?
It's a difficult question because, generally speaking, it's the schools, any school's governing body for a maintained school that has oversight of the school finances. It is something we've been concerned about for quite a number of years. It's right to think back to when the schools were reorganised into one all-through school. That was to give an opportunity for that school to become more sustainable. We have been working very closely with the school ever since then. The school's received some additional funding to help support it get back on its feet, if you like. The dilemma is, and I think that's what we've tried to articulate all the way through, predominantly a school's budget is generated by the number of youngsters on roll. There are other additional factors then, dependent upon the characteristics of those youngsters. For example, if a youngster is in receipt of free school meals, they attract pupil premium, or if they have got an education, health and care plan, for example, they attract some additional funding. There is also a mechanism for a block grant as well that is in some way, shape or form a contribution only to running the building, heating it, lighting it, etc. The dilemma for Almondbury at this moment in time is to be able to offer the curriculum it currently offers, which we've commented on and said that that's quite limited, means that the cost of staffing that it costs more than is generated by the income that the per pupil funding brings in. That's a challenge for all schools. The funding regime as we move from a local to a national funding formula is a challenge for all schools.
Question about the management of the mechanism. So it's mainly through the governing body as a local authority intervene at any stage.
Yes it is. Every year a maintained school would come and have a discussion about its budget and some of the challenges that it has in balancing that with our school's finance team. And we would look then through mechanisms that are available through Schools Forum as to whether we were able to support that. But it's not local authority money, it's schools money, and a contingency exists to support that.
Okay, thank you. Right. Right, panel members, have we got any final questions you want to ask of anybody? Right, thank you very much. Right. Can I just thank everybody for their contributions this morning, members of the public, councillors and officers. What we are going to do now is we're going to withdraw for an hour to consider all the information that we've been presented with. So I think probably if we reconvene at 1:10 here at 1:10 if you look at the agenda, if you've got that, the three decisions that this panel has available to it are to take no further action and to pre-implement initial pre-implementation, to refer it back to the Cabinet with recommendations for amendment, or in exceptional circumstances we could refer to Met Council, only if the decision is not in line with the budget or any policy previously agreed by Council. Panels had legal advice that in this particular circumstance that the financial that does not apply. So the two decisions that are open to us are really 1 and 2. It's like a free decision or to refer it back to Cabinet. So we're going to reconvene at 1:10. If we're not ready to reconvene at 1:10, we will send a message back up here to do that. Right, if you've got any questions, can you please ask those to the Democratic Support Officers during the break? Right. Can you ask that to all of the Democratic Support Officers during the break, please? Well, that's the time. If you do that, Michael, during the break. That's okay. Right, thank you. Right, so we'll see everybody back here, hopefully at 1:10. Full time looking through all the information presented with and coming to our decision, which will be, because of the time we have printed out, printed copies will be available later on. So in relation to the calling of the Cabinet decision on the future of Shrewsbury Community School, the Children's Scrutiny Panel has considered a calling review request, a decision made of the Cabinet on the 16th of July in respect to future options for our community school. We have focused on the issues. Is that where we started from? Yeah, fine. Okay. The panel has focused on the areas we outlined at the beginning, on the areas of capacity, openness and welfareness. The panel has heard from all parties, both in person and in writing, and evaluated the relevant points raised in the calling request form, and weighed up the evidence in respect of the decision. The panel also considered all the relevant background information to assist in determining the rationale behind the decision. And it has been made in accordance with the Council's decision-making processes of relevant considerations of openness and lawfulness. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's taken the time for giving evidence, and this has been real assistance to the panel in reviewing the decision. The panel appreciates that this is an emotive issue for all of those who it's affected, but we have focused on the facts of factual information informing the decision made by Cabinet. The panel understands the significant impact on pupils, parents and staff at Almonbury Community School, and we have deliberated at length about how some of the information around the decision has been communicated with the community. There needs to be careful thought given to the support available for children and parents. In future, better consideration needs to be given about communication, engagement and the timeliness of sharing information with those affected. Having considered all the information provided, it is the panel's view that the implementation decision be freed, but the Cabinet must consider the following main points. Capacity. The panel is satisfied that all relevant factors were taken into account, including the local part. However, this was not explained as clearly as it could have been in the Cabinet reports or in the consultation documentation. Whilst the panel is reassured that there is sufficient capacity in the system, they acknowledge that if Almonbury Community School closes, there will be limited choice at local schools from September 2020. It is not clear about where pupils will be allocated places in September 2020. Openness. It appears that all relevant financial information has been taken into account, but the panel felt that this could be more clearly stated in Cabinet reports. It appears that the assumption was made at the outset that the school was not viable and would fail the due diligence test for academisation. Whilst that might be right, the rationale for making that assumption was not fully explained in the Cabinet reports. For example, the fact of the school operating a £500,000 deficit budget only became apparent at the July Cabinet meeting. In future, the panel would like Cabinet to ensure that there is better explanation within reports. Lawfulness. The panel can understand why signatories to the calling raised issues given the complex nature of the decision-making process. The panel accepts that the statutory notice was correctly published and acknowledges the legal advice given. Second recommendation is that there are regular updates on issues surrounding Carnarvon Community School that be considered by the Children's Scrutiny panel. Thank you. So again, thank you for bearing with us while we made our decision, which I've just read out. Right, the findings of this review meeting will be reported to the next Cabinet meeting, which is next Tuesday, the 13th of August 2019. What time for Cabinet? 4 o'clock. Is that in whereabouts? Reception. In the reception room at Huddersfield Town Hall. And as I said earlier in the decision room, we want Cabinet to respond to the points we've made at that point. Thank you. So I'd like to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
So